So happy Saturday, everyone. Glad that we are here. Today, both Shivangi and Parul are off, so I'll give the overview. We'll talk a little bit about positive thoughts or power of positive thoughts, and meditate. And today we're going to also see if we can talk about positive thoughts with some of our community. There are some doctors here, so I have asked them to enlighten us with some thoughts on how what we do affects us and specifically our brain, and how this whole process that we say that, last week what we were talking, if I summarize in one line, it'll be like, you know, uh, what you eat, you become. So eating well is very important. And today I think we want to talk about what we think we become. So uh, thinking positively definitely has profound effects on us. And there is a lot of research that has happened on it. Um, but, since the very beginning, since I have been practicing, uh, this meditation, um, I mean, all I find is that people who do it right, which again, that's another discussion of its own, what is doing it right? And I think the connection, the depth and breadth of imbibing and embodying this transcendental energy um, definitively impacts behavior, definitely impacts how we react. And all that is kind of related to our thoughts and positive thoughts, mindful practices, this meditation, um, and this meditation, in a way, is also conscious redirection of energy, and all that. There have been studies that it reduces hyperactivity in the limbic system, especially amygdala, and calms the HPA axis, the pituitary and adrenal area, and all that, and all this then affects our brain, almost like, quote unquote, like it rewires it. The neuroplasticity changes that people have, like scientists have looked into. There are real changes. So behavior can change the brain, and your thinking in the brain can change your behavior. So you know, it's like a circular connection there. And emotional regulation, empathy, intuition, conscious decision making, all that, like from when I was very little, I have been hearing about all this in context of satsang. Um, and today Arvindji was talking about how my father used to talk about this. He used to give this example that if there is a river, and I think internally we have a barrage of thoughts, a river of thoughts. So if we want to change the direction, or if we want to create a dam so that there is concentration, and hence, once the dam is created, we can, with that concentrated energy, you know, kick off the turbines, which, electrifies cities. So all that can happen. But the first thing the engineers do is create a canal, which kind of creates an alternate pathway. And that, I think, is pretty key to that profound and very, very dramatic transformation that will take place. So, you know, so if we look at the practice is gradually, persistently redirecting the effort and patience until the flow of how we react, how we think, how we uh, you know um, the whole mindset is redirected. Um, and in this metaphor, I think creating this dam is like uh, creating a, a you know, it's like you concentrate your energy, which was kind of uh, you know flowing freely, and that concentrated energy or that concentration then eventually results into a lot of things that um, we would normally wouldn't expect. Um, so so if we uh, look at Guru Maharaj's teachings, um, you know, there is a downward energy, which is automatic, fast, limbic, and survival based, and there is the upward energy, which is slower, deliberate, prefrontal, and spiritual evolution. So that's the vertical growth or vertical ascent that the practice, um, kind of pushes us towards. So over time, this practice, uh, you know, uh, creates this slower upward energy movement, which slowly becomes stronger and stronger. And that leads to new circuits in our brain, and then hence a permanent transformation. So, I mean, overall, if I look at positive thinking, um, it's in the emotional brain. There was the statement that we feel before we think. Emotions trigger chemical changes in the brain that shape our thoughts and actions. So this whole pipeline, how do we, change? Uh, in my view, it's a simple statement. Just practice, this meditation, and all that will happen. But then after the meditation, we'll talk to Rajat, Anita ji, and Arvind ji to just discuss this whole concept of positive thoughts and the power of positive thoughts. And in my view, it's all related to this meditation. So, um, in the sense that, there's so many byproducts of this practice, and one of them is that you would, uh, you know, another thing I was thinking while I was walking this morning was, you know, somewhere they had said that meditation is nothing but happiness intervention. And that also I can tie to, if there is happiness, there ought to be some positive, happy thoughts around it. So, definitely all this kind of circles around to the same thing. So let's practice first, and then we'll discuss more about the power of positive thoughts. So, all right. So, as usual, sit in a relaxed but still posture, eyes lightly closed. And both of those things basically help in inward orientation and concentration. Um, and concentration is key here. So, bodily movement or sensory input into our eyes, all that, dilutes that focus. So eyes lightly closed, make sure the body is still and relaxed. There's no strain anywhere. And then think of this transcendental energy in form of light that's right here, right now. Feel that presence, and that light is entering our heart, enlightening it, and then distributing throughout our body. And we are getting completely and totally immersed in that light. Mind wanders away, which it naturally will. Once you realize that, just bring it back to this thought and this thought alone, that we are sitting in front of source of this transcendental energy, and this energy is entering our heart, form of light, enlightening it, and that light is then distributing throughout our body, and we are becoming the light ourselves. So we'll start with music. Music fades away, we go deep into silent meditation, and then transition out to music again. Let's start. Happy Saturday, everyone. Glad that we are here in Satsang. So, um, for a while, I had been thinking of having some deeper topics or take a topic and go deeper. Uh, and so today, we are going to look into the power of positive thoughts and the overall well-being is definitely connected to thoughts and um, positive thoughts leads to positive outcomes, negative thoughts possibly uh, some negative outcomes in terms of well-being. So let's and it's informal. You can chime in anytime, but we'll go over a few questions that I will ask Anita ji, Rajat, and Dr. Arvind, and um, and let's see. I mean, and feedback, obviously, because how we want to move forward with these kind of discussions, we'll get some feedback on that as well. So, Arvindji, I don't see your video.
Namaskar, Bhaiya.
Namaskar.
And very fortunate to be here and fortunate to join everybody. Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. Anything I can say is actually already been written by Guru Maharaj way back. And this is the topic we're discussing. And this was probably 80, 90 years ago that he wrote Manobhavo ka Swasth par Prabhav, the impact of thoughts upon health. And he describes this in details. And science, I believe, is simply trying to, support what's been already said in various ways. It's like shining a flashlight to the sun, really, is the thought that comes to our mind. So,
Yeah, and I had been thinking of like going deeper in certain topics, and neuroscience is uh, uncovering some things that I have been listening to for ages, and they're still not well understood. So you were talking about a study done in Ohio or somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Thank you. Yeah, there are so many more recent studies that are very complex. And this study was particularly, its simplicity of message was clear. So this was done back in 2013, I think. And Ohio State University, the clinical psychology department, or positive psychology, what they call it, took a bunch of postdoctoral or postgraduate students, and they were subjected to intense interviews and like assessment of theses and so on. So they were given a stressful interview process, which was meant to be that way. That group of students was then split into two groups. One group was asked to simply not think about the stressful experience of that complex, difficult interview that they've just been through. And they were asked to think alternative thoughts, just like you were saying, Puj Papaji used to say, divert the river flow somewhere else. So think the opposite, think different. And they were in fact asked to say, well, just imagine whenever these thoughts trouble you or you're worried, you want to think back to your tense experience. Go and think about walking the aisles of Kmart or Target or Costco. I prefer Costco, by the way, for reasons we will know. Anyway, just think about going up and down the aisles, And the other group of students was said, go ahead and ruminate, think about, just process over and over again what you went through in that interview, particularly any difficult emotions or thoughts you had into that interview process. So they were asked to do that, I think, for a couple of weeks. And after that 2 week period, blood tests were done independently on each of the two student groups. And the specific test was C reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation. It rises for a short period of a couple of days after inflammatory process. So it's a marker basically suggesting that the body is fighting something. It can, inflammation usually. And inflammation we know is extremely toxic for the entire body, including the brain, in various mechanisms. So what they found very interestingly, and this was with a null hypothesis p-value, significant p-value, so it was proven that the CRP value on average of the group or the cohort that was asked to ruminate stressful thoughts was markedly raised, significantly raised, when compared to the group that were asked to walk down Costco aisles or whatever, so they were asked not to think about. So that study essentially gave a clue as to the fact that harmful thoughts, negative thoughts, or rumination of thoughts, repetitive living back in the past or even present of negative experiences definitely harms the body physiologically and physically. In this case, CRP. And we know that raised CRP is associated with other inflammation like IL-1 and TNF alpha and all of that. The upregulation of inflammatory cytokines causes difficulties in the brain and vascular endothelium.
And you wonder why, right? No. So
Gee.
so I think you also studied some papers, and you were talking about how thoughts are connected with brain chemistry. So can you tie those two together here?
Gee, bhaiya, absolutely. Thoughts are complex process. There are basically, as Rajat was saying before, conscious thoughts, unconscious thoughts, and reactive thoughts is an acute reaction to something. So thoughts are complex. Thoughts are directly linked with neurotransmitters in the brain. So negative thoughts, for example, will arise the hypothalamus making, as you said already, you've already said this, hypothalamus pituitary axis, and that triggers ACTH and cortisol production. Cortisol may be good for a short period of time when you're sitting an exam or some acute stress, but over longer periods of time, it causes hyperglycemia, vascular stress, and it kills off neurons in the brain as well to a degree. It's been proven to reduce cause hippocampal memory problems. And also, there's a hypothesized that depression is linked with elevated long-term cortisol levels, for example. So negative thoughts produce negative effects to the brain and the whole human physiology. Positive thoughts, for example, on the other hand, cause neurochemicals that are positive, like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA. These are neurochemicals that begin to soft wire the brain neurochemically to think positive, and then over time there are structural changes that have been proven. For example, functional MRI scan shows that the prefrontal cortex gets bigger and amygdala and limbic system gets smaller. And we know that limbic system is the noise in the brain. It's the one that encourages negativity. Those are the negative energies that are bombarding the mind. So it quietens down the noise and it elevates the ability of the person to make decisions and judgments and remain positive. So positive thoughts neurochemically soft wire, so it causes functional neuroplasticity. So the two types of neuroplasticity: functional and more permanent, which is structural. Functional is neurochemical change, receptors upregulate themselves, positive or negative, and then over time, the neurons actually develop, new neurons develop, structure changes, physically the structure of the brain changes, and that's more permanent neuroplasticity. So positive pathways, positive decision making, better life, better quality of life, less stress, and physiologically people live better and live longer, living well, as you said before.
Wow. I think that itself is heavy duty. So, go, like, let's tone it down a little and go to Rajat. How's that, Rajat? So, Um, so various kinds of thoughts that um, Arvindji was talking about. Then, so how emotions and thoughts are related?
Yeah. So, yeah, as Arvind Bhaisa was saying, neuroscience has shown very clear association between your thought process and your physical being. And increasingly, it's being recognized that your thoughts are also integrally related to your emotional being. Um, and I won't go into the neurotransmitter and the neurostructural science behind it because Arvind Bhaisa has already covered it. But the unique aspect of the connection between thought and your emotional being with respect to your thought and physical being is unlike the thought physical being connection where uh, the the thought and its resultant effect on the physical being is uh, more objective and more defined. Um, the effect between the thought and its emotional uh, uh, effect is first um, a two-way street where the thoughts can affect your emotions, but on the other hand, your emotions can affect your thought too. So it's like if you have a negative thought and it results in your increased heart rate, does not mean that if you have an increased heart rate because of jogging, it will result in a negative thought. On the other hand, if a thought results in a negative emotion because of any other reason can trigger a negative thought. So it's like a vicious cycle. The second thing, which is also unique with the thought emotional connection, is that reliving that negativity or negative thought or repetitive negative thought, the resultant emotion lasts longer and sometimes can have increased severity. So, a negative thought that might cause just a temporary stress to begin with. If you keep reliving that thought, that stress can gets then converted to anxiety, to then depression, and finally chronic depression. And then it can also spill into not only your own health, but even social health. And as science has progressed, and this is increasingly getting recognized, if you look at the WHO's definition of health, the way it has evolved from just the physical health to mental health and then even social health, this is the driving process that a negative thought will result in, a progressive, longer lasting emotion, which not only will affect you, but can also spill into the social circles. Uh, but
So,
the other side is, sorry.
just this whole definition that physical, mental, social, and I was supposed to send out this whole community, uh, email, which I will, hopefully before the next time we meet next Saturday. Um, so this social aspect. So interestingly, Guru Maharaj's view was that you target your mental capabilities, concentration, inward orientation, positive embodiment, and all that energy, heart centric, all that when you do, um, you are affecting not. So you start with your mental well-being, and then that affects your physical well-being as well as your social well, and being in a social backdrop that's positive, um, all that is part of satsang, one way or the other, the way I have traditionally looked at. So yeah, so you were saying something, brother.
No, I was going to say that, there is the positive aspect to it too, right? So the positive thoughts do exactly the same thing. They create positive emotions. And if you repeat it, like we do in our satsang, we practice it again and again. We focus on the positive thought and we practice it again and again. So the resultant emotions will be stronger and they will also be lasting longer, right? The examples that come to my mind, the two examples that you give very frequently are the reduction in the FIR, or the emotional Teflon, the Teflon armor that we develop, so that if, God forbid, any negativity hits us, we are protected. So that's the positive aspect to it, that thinking a positive thought and repeating that positive thought has stronger and longer lasting emotions than attached to it. And again, it also results in the same neurotransmitter, changes, whether it is increased dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, which are the positive neurotransmitters, and also increased in GABA, which is actually a negative neurotransmitter, which negates the negativity in mind. So that has also been shown, and then the neurostructural changes and all that, which Arvind Bhai Sahab has covered. But it's very, very, very important to understand that there is a very scientific connection between thoughts and your emotions, and the difference is the more you repeat your thoughts, whether it is positive or negative, the reaction, the emotional reaction, is going to be stronger and longer lasting compared to the physical stimuli, which is very limited and very predictable.
So coming to Anita ji, so negative thoughts are in a way in our flight or fight mode and the whole survival mode, just knowing that, oh, here is a problem, I need to run from it, or, survival depends on some of those reactions, which are important. Um, but then if we continually be in that mode, then negative thoughts can diminish capacity. So what would you add to that?
Yeah, Namaskar, Bhai Sahab. Good morning, everybody. I feel fortunate to be here today. I'm learning so much. But yes, just to kind of put a slightly different angle, we have heard, from Arvindji and Rajatji about all these changes that happen neurochemically and, with the emotion pathways. But what does it translate to when it comes to basic day-to-day functioning? So we see that, all the negative neurotransmitters and negative chemicals that collect in the body from negative thoughts like cortisol, so eventually, ultimately, they affect the functioning day-to-day of our brain. So our brain, when we think of the area that controls the higher thinking, is the prefrontal cortex, like the front of the brain. So that controls our cognition, how we process thoughts. Our cognitive flexibility comes from there. Creative thinking, focus, attention span, how well we do at our work, whatever work it is, whether we are studying, whether we are at our job, trying to do some work. So stress and all these negative neurochemicals, they take away from that capacity. And we find that we are actually functioning at a lower capacity than we are capable of. So if we, are just in a neutral state, we have a certain capacity of the brain to function, to control our negative impulses and be able to put out our productivity level, attention span, collaboration, all these positive, we call them the higher functioning organizational capacities of the prefrontal cortex, executive function. So all that gets hampered, diminished. We cannot function at that level with the negative thought process if that goes on for a long time. And that affects our quality of life. It affects our performance, like at work and school. It also affects our emotions, how we react to people around us. So The prefrontal cortex can control the limbic system, which is a lower area of the brain, which is responsible for emotion and behavior. And we cannot control our emotions and behavior, so we end up being bad coworkers and bad family members. And so all this negative thinking affects that. And plus, of course, the physical health. So it affects our heart health, it affects our gut health, it affects immunity. If we are in a negative funk, like, we might catch more colds in that winter or something like that. And all this has been proven. So negative thoughts can affect us in multiple ways. And science is, like Arvindji said, science is now catching up to all this, and people are beginning to pay attention to how these soft, so-called soft things that we, redirecting our thoughts and trying to get out of these negative, ideas can actually help multiple aspects of our life, because negative thoughts impact us negatively everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things I have read, I have experienced, intuitively makes sense to me, but then, sometimes when we talk about these practices that actually make it happen, I don't know, somehow that connection is missing. But anyway, so I am fascinated by some of this. Um, so Arvindji, so what about the flip side? How, uh, it- what's the science of positive neurochemistry?
Yeah, certainly. A lot has been already said, and I'll just repeat some of what's been said. The thing with positive neurochemistry is that, you know, our positive thinking, as was also mentioned, actually dictates the behavior. It modulates our behavior. It modulates multiple physiological systems. But positive thinking, for example, will give rise again to positive neurochemicals like dopamine, like oxytocin, like 5-hydroxytryptamine or serotonin, which actually functionally is actually 95% made in the gut. We should never forget that the gut is also
Yeah,
classed as the peripheral brain. We don't just have one brain, it's linked with the gut, and the gut is surrounded by our nervous system, autonomic nervous system.
yeah, we should talk more about that one day.
Yeah. Guru
Uh,
Maharaj wrote about the gut he wrote about this gut, he wrote about the hormones. So basically, for example, serotonin, I mean, Anita ji, your colleagues will know this, when I used to practice in the hospital, if you got a variceal bleed, you'd give ondansetron, 5-HT1A receptor antagonist. But basically, what it's saying is serotonin is secreted 90-95% in the gut, 5 or 10% in the brain. It's a positive neurotransmitter. It helps reduce the risk of depression, but it also allows the proper functioning of the gut. And proper functioning of the gut, particularly what we eat. We are what we eat, has been said. So, for example, it's been proven scientifically, I've sent you a paper on that as well, that vegetarian and vegan diets significantly modulate the gut microbiota to reduce the inflammatory stress on the gut neurons and the serotonin secretion. So basically, the toxic effects of what we eat depends on what we eat. And for example, vegetarian, vegan, and high fiber and Mediterranean diets are a positive modulator of gut chemistry and therefore brain chemistry through serotonin. So all these systems are interconnected. And as you rightly said, what is the impact of positive thinking? The impact of positive thinking is positive health. Is it positive personal Vivek? Guru Maharaj used to say Vivek, the decision making and the judgment, which, I want more of that. That decision making of in life, when to do what's right and what's wrong, that comes from the prefrontal cortex, and that comes from enhanced positive neurotransmitter. So, and also reduce cortisol will also reduce cardiovascular risk and also general health. Plenty of evidence.
How does all this relate to the emotional tone that we carry with us?
Yep. That is a very important point because that's the final common pathway. That is the final common denominator, if you will, of our life and our living. So over time, when we have positive thoughts, positive living, and we make it a way of life, like satsang on a regular basis, for example, and observing, satsang, for example, teaches us to observe pratyahar, observe the thoughts, don't engage with the negative thought, let them they'll get tired and they'll settle down. So the less we engage, we're not saying negativity or negative things in life will never happen. Dukh to aayenge, sorrow will come, bad things will happen in life. All of us will have things happen to us in life that are negative through our behavior or through behavior of others. But going past that and not repetitively engaging in that enhances positivity. And when you reduce those negative ruminations, you reduce cortisol, you reduce aldosterone, you reduce other toxic inflammatory cytokines, inflammation. By the way, inflammation has been linked to dementia, not in the inflamed brain hypothesis. Well established. It's also linked with Parkinson's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases. I used to practice Parkinson's treatment, as you know. Since I retired, I don't, but it's important to understand that those kind of inflammatory impacts are reduced. So if you reduce the inflammation, you then give the person a chance to function better in life and in society. So positive thinking, positive changes in the brain physiology, in the gut physiology, in cardiovascular physiology, but overall then ability of the person to make the right decisions for themselves and therefore be a better member of the society and group society, and engaging with it's also been written multiple times that engaging with the right sort of people who have positive thoughts themselves as well makes a big difference. As you know, Guru Maharaj said, Milte come and meet me. And there is published evidence also saying that the brain changes in the fMRI brain changes with thickening and enlargement of the prefrontal cortex and reduction of the amygdala were found more in those meditators, I repeat this, more in those meditators who had more face-to-face and longer and regular meditation, as opposed to very short, web-based meditation. This is not a short web-based, but I'm just saying that's published. So that supports a group thought
Yeah,
process.
I mean, in person, we need to talk about as well. So before we open up, to wrap this up, so Anita ji, the benefits and then takeaways, Rajat, follow it.
Yes, of course. So as has already been touched upon, so the whole idea here is to try to increase our positive thoughts. So whenever a negative thought happens, like Arvindji was saying, of course, some happen automatically. If you're exposed to something, that feeling comes in even before we have the capacity to or the time to formulate a thought. But there will be negative things happening and causing negative thoughts. But as quickly as possible, if we can try to redirect our thoughts into something positive, it could be via some thought process called gratefulness, that I still have this and these are the positive things going for me, and then slowly we can convert it to a positive thought. So now the positive feelings and positive thoughts can affect us in multiple ways. Of course, the physical health, that lowers our blood pressure, and heart health, and of course the gut health, as Arvindji was saying, the immunity benefits. So physical health benefits of positive thinking are many, but of course positive thoughts lead to positive emotions, and that kind of makes us nicer people, as the flip side to what we were talking about before. And all this happens again at the level of the prefrontal cortex. So all these good hormones that, good neurotransmitters that are released when we are thinking positive thoughts like the dopamine, they affect the capacity, the functioning of the prefrontal cortex, so we can perform like more complicated thought processes, positive ones, thinking, creative thinking, collaboration, cognitive flexibility, adaptability. We can adapt more to our surroundings, whether they're at work or in the family, or in community. So overall, if we can control our emotions and behaviors better, because those are the lower areas of the brain, and if our prefrontal cortex is strengthened by our positive thinking, and it becomes a habit, and that causes like physical changes in our brain over time that can, increase our quality of life as it is by making us, better at home, at work, better individuals with our feelings and emotions, and help us lead healthier lives. So easier said than done. It has to be cultivated, this habit of trying to redirect away from the negative and into the positive. But the more time we can spend dwelling on positive thoughts and kind of remain in the positive circuit where one positive thought yields to a positive emotion, and then we can, somehow redirect it to form more positive thoughts that can affect all parts of our life: physical health, mental health, social health, emotional health, and everything in between.
Very good. Thank you. So Rajat, so how do you wrap this up?
Anita ji has summed it up so well. Nothing much to add. Uh, if you ask me, the biggest two takeaways from reading this article that Arvind Bhai Sahib said, and the talk, is I think you had written it. My thoughts are my reality. So basically, for me, it was a big, takeaway that uh, you can consciously control your thoughts. A lot of times, because of whatever is happening around us, the circumstances, we tend to forget that, uh, and we go into a reactionary mode. But the biggest takeaway for me was you can make a conscious effort to control your thoughts. Um, and that is what becomes the reality. The second takeaway for me was the amplification effect of the thought and the emotion. So if you practice positive thought, its amplify its effect on the emotion, the positive emotion amplifies every time you practice that positive thought. And it results in the reduced FIR, it results in uh, stronger Teflon armor against the negativity. So every time we practice, we are basically not only reinforcing the positivity, we practice positivity, not only we reinforce it, we actually also amplify it. And then the last thing is, this is the perfect forum to be in, where we practice positivity. There are multiple other options, uh, mindfulness and gratitude, but satsang, and I think as we will progress with our discussions in later sessions, one of the integral aspects of this practice of satsang or meditation that we do is to focus on the positive thought. Um, so that is what will result in physical well-being. What it would result is in our emotional well-being, which as now is being increasingly proven by science, will also spill into social well-being. And again, it's a two-way cycle. So it will come back. You are positive, you spill positivity, and then it comes back to you. And again, that cycle continues and gets amplified at every time you do it. So I think those were the three biggest takeaways
So
for me.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that 3, 4 years back, I thought that we will have discussions like this in this forum. So thank you, Rajat, Anita ji, and Arvind ji. Um, the the other piece is that not just the consciously we can change a few things. I think meditation actually brings it down to the unconscious, subconscious levels where you literally go to the root cause and impact, the emission of, uh, thoughts themselves. So negative versus positive. So yeah, we need some of that survival instincts and survival concepts to make sure that we are safe and sound. But beyond that, I think we change our ways in which we just continually, because negativity somehow, we have this affinity within our mind to negativity, which is probably inbuilt. So you have to practice, you have to vertically ascend, you have to be on higher states to well that. And on that note, I'll open this up. Luz, Steve, Paula, Christy, um, what do you think of this discussion?
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for all of that. That was so interesting. Because I have just literally gone through this whole thing in the last 7 months. I lost my mum, as Sanjeev knows, and my grief took me down into a depression, and everything changed. When I would get into the really deep depressive states, my body would become heavy, I would be fatigued, I would get pains and aches, like it would really affect me physically. I would get bloated stomach and problems with my digestion, my skin, like it completely affects your body more than people speak about. And I couldn't sleep. I had so much trouble sleeping. I couldn't find joy in anything. And it came down to the fact that I needed to make the choice. I think you have to choose to be happy and to start seeking that happiness again. So once I made that decision that I no longer want to feel like this, I can't feel like this, I need my life back, I started meditating very regularly, and morning and nighttime, and doing breathing during the day to try to just keep myself at a more calm level. And slowly I noticed that my mood was lifting just from doing that alone. And I changed my eating as well. I was having more greens and more juices, more vegetables. I cut meat out. I'll have maybe chicken once a week or some fish. And everything changed. Like, I no more bloating, no more digestive problems, no more sleep problems. And I was at the stage where I was able to change my negative thoughts. I would notice when my thought patterns were becoming really negative, and I would stop them in their tracks and change it to something else. And that in the beginning was gratitude. I'm grateful I have a roof over my head. I'm grateful that I have food here. I'm grateful that I have water that I can drink straight here in my home. And it changed. Things started to change. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. I'm not going to lie. It took me from December until I'd say a month ago. But the change is massive. And I've come off of my anxiety medication, which is major. I was very nervous, but I felt confident that with all these changes, I could continue it without the medication. So, yeah, I just wanted to share because it's literally everything that we've spoken about today.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, I have, so many, I can take personal examples where, life twists and turns, and how you tackle through the inner strength that you gain from being in this practice. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yes, it is. I mean, I only managed to come here on Saturdays, But what I did is I recorded the music that you play, and I do that. I use that music every day, and then I'll have the silence after every single day. So I'm practicing satsang every day, and that really did. It was a big part of the change in my thinking and my behaviors. So it's a practice. It's a whole well-being thing. It's your food, everything. Even I started yoga as well,
I
but
mean,
gentle.
Guru Maharaj wrote so many books and there are so many guidelines and so many tips. But one thing I like about this is primarily his practice makes us think about what we should be doing. What should we be eating? What should we, uh, focus on? And slowly the behavior or the behaviors that are, you know, that in our gut, we kind of know what is good for us, but it's just that we don't have the inner strength to follow through.
No, I mean, it's like I was saying last week, I'm from a Greek family, and everything about our gathering is food, lamb, meat, it's all based around big dinners and food. So trying to get myself away from that ingrained meat, wanting that barbecued meat from since little, it's hard. It's not easy, but
See, actually, and thanks for being so candid, but Indians are also all about food. And lately, while we know all this, there is this trend that we are more affluent. We can afford more rich food, and that rich food becomes richer and then becomes uh, far heavier, right? And that's happening to satsang too. And I have been, uh, so just last couple of years, I'm like, okay, um, all that is good, but what about sattvic food? What about fresh, healthy, and light food in satsang? Um, should be integral, but so uh, somehow things we humans have our way to just turn things into, all, you know, being social, having food uh, in a group setting, in a community, all good. But then it just goes from, oh, I need to do better than the other person. I need to offer more things. And again, in that process, somewhere we lose that basic.
yeah.
Um, been there, done that.
And also, I don't know if it's the same in Indian families, but Greek families like eat more, have more. You finish your plate, they put more on your plate, and you have to finish it. You have to finish it. So it's very hard to like put your boundaries in place, and then people look at you like, "What's wrong? Are you okay? What's happening?" And you have to explain it, and they don't understand because they're not, spiritual people. It's different.
No,
So
no. So interestingly, my background all deeply spiritual, right? Um, so I was this probably is 30 some years back. I went back to my hometown, which is 200 miles west of Delhi, in Jaipur, and so I got invited to, I think it was a lunch, and it was after the meditation, and I had my lunch, and then the host was very gracious, very spiritual. He says, "Oh, you are going to have this sweet, which is heavy stuff, and that much." It's like, "Oh, you got to have this. That's my request." And I am still remember because that's part of the culture. It's like so I don't want to waste food, so I somehow consumed what I shouldn't, consumed whatever, and it's like, and then it happened again, and I'm like, oh gosh, so I still remember that. So yeah, it's culturally, there are some very interesting twists. I mean, it's all good,
Yeah.
but not really.
No, I know, because we have baklava, which is very similar to your Indian sweets, I think.
Yeah.
And they're so syrupy, they're so delicious, but they're so bad for us. So it's hard to cut everything out that's part of your culture. But when you notice, when you start doing it, you really notice the change. You really, really do. And when you say to people, change what you eat, it will help you mentally, I don't think people truly link the two together. So people have noticed a change in me, and I have said to them it's down to meditation and changing my food, and they're like, really? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Sometimes even here, it's like they don't understand somehow. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to share that with you because it's just so exactly what we're speaking about. So thank you all so much for sharing your wisdom with us. I have to go, I'm really sorry, but I will see you next week, and see you all, experts. Bye everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Luz, anything before Steve just said, really appreciated everything that has been said by the panel.
Yeah, happy Saturday, everyone. So excited to be here with you all. I missed last week, I think. I don't think you were having a session. Not sure, but I signed on and I was so disappointed that I couldn't join you, maybe because you didn't have a class. So I was like, oh no, I hope they didn't change the class because I love this session.
So
It gets me
we,
through.
we had the session last week, didn't we?
Jivya,
Yeah.
we have.
Oh,
Huh?
so there was
Somehow.
a connectivity issue, or
Oh, maybe. But
No,
so
there was
always
trouble
just
signing up.
text me or email me if you're having any issues.
okay.
Sangeeta ji, what did you say?
There was trouble signing up last week, as I had mentioned in the group.
Oh yeah, that's it. But this is like
Yes.
my reset. This is my anchor for the week. So I was like, oh, I hope it's there next week. So thank you so much. This session was fantastic, actually. I mean, each session always is, but I loved just like the weigh in from sort of like the medical experts in the group. And even Christie's experiences also. It's funny how we were talking about food. I come from a Latina background and we also eat meat. And I remember there have been times I haven't gone fully vegetarian ever, but I have gone pescatarian. So I would give up beef and chicken. I'm in that phase again. But I remember when I first did that, she had a friend who was making dinner, also Latina, and they were gonna make beef or something meat heavy. And I was like, I don't eat meat anymore. She's like, really? She's like, but what about just this one time? How about just this time? I was like, no. Eventually they, because they love you,
Yeah.
they'll understand. And also, you can point to, once they see like the positive changes, they'll be like, oh yeah, no problem. We'll make sure that we have something for you, but yeah, it's funny. I can totally relate, and I can relate to what she said even now. And I feel like I'm still in the process. This stuff happens in phases. Like in the past, like, yes, I've eaten really healthy, I've meditated every day and things were good. And then you're in like a good phase in life, and then somehow dips happen. And I'm in a dip now, so this is why it's so important for me to reinforce this knowledge every weekend with the testimonies that you're providing, and like the kind of like the dialogues that you're having, because I see it now even with my coworkers and myself. Like I see like my coworkers are beginning to experience like health issues, like heart palpitations or hair loss. I'm beginning to get like skin issues, and I'm like, oh, this is because of stress.
Yep.
This is stress and all, so, but it's very hard when you're in the thick of it and it's kind of being imposed on you. It's like you really have to fight hard to maintain that healthy lifestyle, and so this week I took off the whole week And I took off 2 days last week for a real reset, a real like, okay, I'm going to build my practice again and I'm going to try and continue it when I get back. So it's so important to just like really be strong about that.
I think on that note, we should do in person soon.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think even if it's just a few of us, that's fine. It's just let's figure that out.
But just thank you so much, everyone. This was great. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Liz. So anything else before we wrap up? It has been a long session now. Hi, Steve. Yeah, always good to see you.
Hello. Yeah, I just one of my takeaways is it's just so important to be around people that are intelligent and they're positive. And it's just when you associate with brilliant, positive people, nothing but good things can happen. It can only have a positive effect on you. So I think I talked about this a couple sessions ago. I've been reading a book by Arthur Brooks, and he talks about macronutrients. So with our diet, we need to have a balance in our proteins, our carbohydrates, our fats. But just with our human interactions are so important. So he talks about 3 macronutrients that are important to happiness: enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose. And it's clear that our panel has purpose. They're brilliant. They work in fields that are so important in terms of helping us to understand these things and to grow. So just what a remarkable panel. I just wanted to thank everyone for that.
Yeah, and I have asked them to continually build some discussions around nutrition, how sleep affects us, our well-being, and obviously meditation and stress, thoughts. So there is even in this discussion on the power of positive thought, there's so many aspects of thoughts. Uh, you know, so we'll continue. Hopefully, we'll continue this thread and see. Maybe I don't know if we want to do it every week or every other week. We'll figure that out.
Well, sounds good. Have a wonderful week.
You too, and love, light, and peace be with you. On that note, let's wrap this up, and hopefully we'll be back in satsang soon. I'm glad that we were here, and love, light, and peace be with you. Take care. See ya.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you so much.
Charan's first Priya ji. Hi everyone.
Hello, Ish.
प्रणाम भैया जी
Namaskar, KP Singh ji.
सादर चरण स्पर्श भैया
Karila.
सभी को नमस्कार
Namaskar, Geeta, Omkar, Renu ji, Mahima ji.
प्रणाम भैया सभी को प्रणाम
So, yeah. So I think we need to also talk about the, opening up the community for the broader audience. So so Yuan, let's wrap up the session, but those who have time and want to test out the community, I think I'll send out an email to everybody who attends, but let's stick on to have that discussion.